I now would like to invite Dr. PSV Nataraj, who's a professor of Systems and Control Engineering Group at IIT Bombay. He has been involved in teaching and research for about 34 years at IIT Bombay. His current interests are in the areas of deep learning, reinforcement learning, and predictive maintenance. Professor Nataraj has conducted many courses for various industries and organizations, such as nuclear, space, defense, and research organizations. He has worked on several projects for these organizations and other industries. He is the editor of International Journal of Automation and Control and associate editor of Advanced Control for Applications, WILE, an International Journal of Systems Assurance Engineering and Management, Springer. So please grace the conclave with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Neha Sharma. I would like to thank at the outset NASSCOM, IIT Gandhinagar, and IIT Jammu for inviting me to deliver a talk. I would like to give a talk which is containing three major topics. One is digital twin, second one is fault detection and diagnosis, and third one is remaining useful life. All this come in the area of course, smart manufacturing, predictive maintenance, and so on. So during the course of the talk, I will also touch upon some research directions in the area of predictive maintenance. So my current research interests are, as already mentioned by Dr. Neha, I am currently interested in applying machine learning, deep reinforcement learning to engineering applications as opposed to computer science applications. And I'll also present very quickly some case studies in engineering applications. Let's start off with a digital twin, and then I will go to predictive maintenance and cover a few case studies. So why am I talking about digital twin? Firstly, I'm talking about digital twin because it's the in thing nowadays for smart manufacturing. So most of the, if not all the major industries, they'd like to have a digital twin, a data-driven simulator for their industrial system. And using the digital twin, they can do things like predictive analytics, predictive maintenance, and so on. Of course, they can also, if they have a good digital twin, they can also do controls and advanced control studies and optimization studies. So a digital twin, what is a digital twin? We used to call this about 25, 30 years ago, we used to call this as just a simulator, a process simulator or a plant simulator or a manufacturing system simulator. But the new word nowadays that is being used is digital twin. Of course, the methodology to develop a digital twin has also changed considerably. So earlier we used to use first principles. We used to use concepts from physics, chemistry, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, heat transfer, and all to build a digital twin. But nowadays, because of the increasing popularity of ML and EL, machine learning and deep learning, digital twins are now data-driven. That is just based on the input and output data. We can have a very good digital twin. So we have both approaches to building a digital twin. One is from the first principles, and second one is from the input and output data. In either case, a digital twin is an up-to-date representation of the actual physical asset in operation. So it should be able to model the component at the component level. We should have a model if we would like to, and also system of components and system of systems. So a digital twin can be attempted at all levels, at component level, system level, and system of systems level. Here is an example which we did. We built a digital twin and industrial boiler. And you can see on this slide, the various components of our digital twin or a digital clone. So this can be used for operational optimization, that is for optimizing the operations of the boiler, and also be used for predictive maintenance. And these are two very important topics in all manufacturing and process industries. So the methodology, very briefly, is like this. First of all, the digital twin or digital clone has been built for an industrial boiler. You're all familiar with the company GE. So we had the data from GE, North America plant. The power plant generates about 600 megawatts. And we collected 3 complete operating data sets. And the aim was to, as shown here, the aim is to build a digital twin, a nonlinear high fidelity model, and validate that with the actual operating data and benchmark that against 2 other digital twins that were available at that point of time. And the bottom line is here, our digital twin, which we built from the first principles, is shown to be the best digital twin. Reference is to this journal, Energy, which appeared, the papers appeared in 2017. So what was the purpose, or what's a digital twin for? The digital twin in this particular application is actually a virtual clone of the real boiler turbine system. On the next slide, I'll be showing you the diagrams and the data also related to this. The model, the digital model is supposed to behave realistically. In simple words, our digital twin is a mimic of the real boiler turbine system. So once you have a clone or a mimic on your desktop computer, then you can fiddle around with the digital clone. You can do lots of what if analysis. For example, you can see what happens if you would like to increase the power generation from 600 megawatts to 650. Where are the bottlenecks? Where will be the issues in operation, and how the control system will work, etc. And the way it is deployed is that you can put this on your desktop in parallel with the real system, and eventually it will increase the operational efficiency of the real boiler turbine system, and it will also aid in better maintenance. So this is the diagram of the industrial boiler. The operating data is given on the right. Okay, and we collected, as I mentioned, we collected 3 sets of data. So we are showing you the results. I'm not going into the development of the digital twin. As I mentioned briefly, we use basic laws of conservation of mass, energy, momentum, and physics, chemistry, thermodynamics to develop this digital twin. Of course, we can also use ML and DL. In some other applications, we did we did take up both the approaches to build a digital clone. This particular case, we went in for a first principles based digital twin, and I'm just showing you the results of this. So we have a nonlinear boiler model. At the end, we have a nonlinear boiler model or a digital twin, and there are several inputs like the temperatures, the flows, and then the output is pressure and level. So you can see on this slide, the actual data collected from the GE plant in North America, the 600 megawatt plant. And on the next slide, we can see the comparison between the digital twin and the actual data. So the actual data is plotted in black here, and our simulator data is shown in blue. The other 2 digital twins, which were available, one was a Swedish digital twin that is shown in green. So you can see that the comparison is pretty good. Our digital twins accuracy is 98% for pressure and 95.5% for level. The conclusion of this exercise was that we developed successfully a digital twin for the industrial boiler, and it is a part of a combined cycle power plant. So to summarize, what are digital twins and what they are good for, we can see that digital twin basically can dynamically model the process, the manufacturing process, the energy process in this case. We trained with operational data so that you can make your digital twin represent the actual plant over a wide range of operating conditions. And of course, lastly, you have to validate the accuracy of the digital twin that you have developed versus new sets of operational data, which are not considered for the training process. And the outcome is that digital twin results are close to operational data. Okay, so that is the first topic, digital twin. The reason I introduced that topic was because it's a very, very hot topic. There are two very hot topics in today's talk of mine. One is a digital twin, other one is predictive maintenance. And predictive maintenance, you'll see, is based, the one that I'm going to take up is based on ML and machine learning and deep learning. So let's look at predictive maintenance in a bigger context, in the context of fault detection and diagnosis, FDT, which has been there for decades. Fault detection and diagnosis has been there almost, I think 50 years ago. Since 50 years, last 50 years, we have been looking at fault detection and diagnosis using various techniques. What is the benefit of looking at fault detection and diagnosis technique? The main benefit is that you can have early diagnosis of sensor and systems faults to avoid unnecessary system maintenance, maybe even shutdown. You can avoid probably dangerous accidents, and degradation in the performance can also be cut down. You cannot avoid it, but you can at least slow it down. And this will thereby ensure safe, efficient, and reliable operation and reduce the losses in production. You all would be aware of the different maintenance strategies. I'm presenting predictive maintenance in the context of three basic maintenance strategies. One is reactive maintenance. Other one is preventive maintenance. So these two are definitely familiar to you. Reactive maintenance is when you maintain a system after the failure has occurred. In the sense like, for example, if at home the light bulb gets fused, then you will take out the fused light bulb and put in a new light bulb. So maintenance is done after the failure has occurred. In preventive maintenance, what you do is mostly you go for a time-based schedule. Like every quarter, you will service the system. Maybe it is a compressor or a turbine. So you will go in for a quarterly time-based schedule for maintenance. It is okay, but it is not the best because you might be doing the maintenance sometimes unnecessarily and sometimes after the failure event has occurred. So it is suboptimal both ways. Nowadays, people would like to consider predictive maintenance, which is like doing the maintenance at the best possible time, at the optimum time. Before the failure has occurred, just before the failure has occurred, you get into maintenance. And how would you know when the failure is going to occur? By using tools of machine learning and deep learning. Basically, you will try to predict when maintenance is required, and then you will decide when is the best time to do the maintenance. So you're neither too early nor too late. It's all about timing. So the difference between preventive maintenance, which is very popular even for domestic applications, like your water filter, you go in for preventive maintenance. For your car also, you might be going for preventive maintenance, like once in 3 months, 6 months, or after every 5,000 kilometers. Maybe you take the car to the mechanic and ask the person to service the car. So that is preventive maintenance based on time schedule. Now, time here doesn't mean just clock time. It could also mean distance. It could mean cycles and so on. So as opposed to preventive maintenance, what do we do in predictive maintenance? That's what I'm going to talk about in this and the next few slides. First of all, let's see what good is predictive maintenance doing to us. So it lets you estimate when machine will fail. So it kind of gives an estimate when the machine is likely to fail, so that you can plan your maintenance in advance, eliminate unnecessary downtime, better manage your inventory, and maximize the equipment lifetime. So all good benefits. How does the workflow for FDD, that is fault detection and diagnosis, which comes under predictive maintenance. How does it look like? These are the basic steps of predictive maintenance. So we start by acquiring the data from the plant. Then we pre-process the data. We identify what are called as condition indicators. We train the model. In this case, it could be machine learning or deep learning model. Then we deploy and integrate this with our IT system. So these are the major steps in predictive maintenance. So let's go through each of the steps very quickly. And all these steps can be executed for both manufacturing and process plants. Acquiring data is not just acquiring healthy data. We will also have to acquire faulty data. For example, here I've taken about triplex pump. So we have to acquire the operating data when the triplex pump is in healthy condition, as well as when it has developed faults. Collect the data using your sensors, typically temperature, flow, pressure, speed, and so on, and keep the sensor data with you. On the right, I've shown you a typical plot of sensor data. So what this plot on the right shows is the healthy and the normal. The healthy data is shown in green, which is in the background, and red shows faulty data. As you can see, healthy and faulty data usually heavily overlap. It is not always that you get a very separable healthy and faulty data. In many cases, or in a majority of cases, you will find that healthy data and faulty data are cluttered. They overlap quite a bit. So there is a big challenge in that you have to be able to dig out the faulty data and separate that from the healthy data. So further steps help you do that. So in the next step, what we do is we take the raw data which you're getting from the sensors, clean them up, pre-process it. Okay, the step of pre-processing means you might remove noise, outliers, etc. Then convert the data from, maybe it's a good idea to convert the data from time to frequency domain, especially for rotary system. I think for most of the manufacturing system, they have rotary machines, okay? So in that case, you might be able to more easily separate the data in the frequency domain rather in the time domain. So on the rightmost plot I've shown you, where if you get into the frequency domain, okay, you can see more separation between the red and the green lines. The red line is for faulty and the green one is for healthy. Whereas in the time domain, that is the middle plot, you can see that the healthy and faulty data are hard to distinguish. So you can see the difference on this slide between pre-processed data in the time domain and the pre-processed data in the frequency domain. So it makes sense for us to convert the data from time to frequency domain. So there are many techniques. There are so many techniques which are involved in pre-processing, like noise removal, normalizing the data, smoothing the data, removing the outliers, finding out the missing values, removing them or filling in them, and so on. The third step, which is a very difficult step, is to identify the condition indicators. Now, what are condition indicators? Condition indicators are features whose behavior changes in a predictable way as the system degrades. That means these are indicating the condition of the machine. Condition indicators, in very simple words, are some signals or some measures of the signal which indicate the health of the machine. For example, the mean of the data could be a condition indicator. The standard deviation of the data could be a condition indicator. The peak frequency could be a condition indicator. The peak amplitude could be a condition, and so on. Okay, so these are data features. And I've shown here on this slide some example. Peak frequencies can serve as condition indicators. So I collect the data I collect the sensor data, clean the data up, and then I transform from time to frequency domain using something like FFT. You can do that, and then you plot it. And if you look at the peak frequency, it may happen that they have good separation. So the peak frequencies can be used to serve as indicators of the health of the machine. This is the third step. The last step is on training a model. Okay, here we are going to look at three major areas in predictive maintenance. The first area is anomaly detection. The second one is fault detection and classification. And third one is remaining useful life. I'm sure all of you have heard of these three major areas. Those are into manufacturing, they would be encountering this problem that there is some anomaly in the data. How do you detect that? Then there are some faults happening in somewhere in the manufacturing plant. How do you catch that fault? Not manually, automatically. A third one is how do we calculate the remaining useful life of the machines that are there in our manufacturing plant? It's good to know in advance how much more life is left in each of those major machines. So these three are the major areas in predictive maintenance: anomaly detection, fault classification, and remaining useful life computation. So the model that we are going to choose very much depends upon the purpose, whether you want to detect the anomalies or you want to catch and classify the faults, and whether you want to compute the remaining useful life. In a general sense, you can say that here you are going for development of machine learning or deep learning based models. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. So let us just call them as machine learning based models. But the machine learning models that you will develop will be very different for each of these three major areas in predictive maintenance. So what do we have on this slide? We have the step of training a machine learning model either to catch the anomalies or to classify the faults or to compute the remaining useful life. How do you develop this model? First of all, let's go back one slide. See, we are in step number 4 here. We have acquired the sensor data, we have pre-processed it, and we have identified good condition indicators, just like I've shown here, peak frequencies maybe. Now the peak frequencies, if, for example, they are selected as a condition indicators, they will be used to train your machine learning model. It's not that the sensors data or the pre-processed sensor data will be used to train the machine learning model. It's a condition indicator data set that will be used to train the machine learning model. And in the first case, we train the machine learning model based on the condition indicators to catch anomalies. For example, if a compressor is running and suddenly the speed of the compressor jumps up quite a bit drastically, let's say, jumps up or falls down, that is an anomaly in the speed. So we have a threshold which we decide, and the challenge is to be able to automatically catch when an anomaly occurs. So we can do that if we have a good machine learning model. In the second case, like I have taken the triplex pump, we would like to know when there is a seal leakage or an inlet block or a worn bearing. So can we catch all these faults automatically? See, when a plant is operating or a plant is under operation, you will get typically lakhs, if not millions of data points. They'll be pouring in, and humanly, it is impossible to catch these anomalies or identify the faults. Okay, so the thing here is that we would like to develop automated methods or automated algorithm we would like to develop, which can identify and catch these faults. So this is the application. This is the challenge in the application. So that is the second one. You would like to come out with a model that can automatically, from the operating data, identify whether there is a seal leakage or a blocked inlet or a worn bearing or some combination of this. See, faults can occur singly or they can occur in combination. So it may be 2 faults occurring simultaneously, or all the 3 can also occur in the case of this pump. The last one is again extremely important and extremely useful for all manufacturing plants, is to be able to compute the remaining useful life in the machine. Now, these models in the last case are very different. These machine learning models are very different from the machine learning models that we use for anomaly detection and fault classification. So here, the workflow is similar, but the model that you're going to train is very different. Okay. Last step is to deploy and integrate. There's no use in building a model if you're not going to deploy it. So after you have developed a machine learning model for RUL, that's remaining useful life, or FDD or anomaly, you have to deploy this trained algorithm on some edge computing device that is shown here. And this one will be, of course, integrated with your primary IT system, and it will be used to send out, diagnostics to the operators, to the managers about the anomalies or the faults or the remaining useful life. Okay, so that is a very quick overview of this extremely important and hot topic currently in the industry today, predictive maintenance. What I want to do is to just summarize very quickly what I have talked about so far. We are looking at now one of the most powerful methods for maintenance of all components, system of systems in manufacturing as well as in process industry, a very smart automated way. What do we do here? Basically, we try to catch anomalies, we try to identify the faults, or we try to compute the remaining useful life. How do we do this? We go in for machine learning or deep learning based methods. And the workflow begins with collection of the raw data from the sensors. Then we pre-process that, we identify condition indicators, then we train the machine learning models, and ultimately we deploy our model, which is in the form of some Python code or whatever may be the language. We deploy that on some edge computing device, and that will be working online in real time with your plant. So that is a quick overview of predictive maintenance. There are, of course, challenges here. Many challenges are there. It's not like a cakewalk for us. There are many challenges, and you might be aware that already many industries are looking at predictive maintenance, but they're facing lots of challenges. So let's look quickly at some of the challenges which are faced by industries in adoption of this predictive maintenance strategies. More the information, this is a very intuitive kind of statement. More the data you have, better you can, better your predictions become, right? So because data is the fuel for any PD. In fact, data is the fuel for any machine learning, deep learning method. And in the case of PDM, which is built upon ML and DL, the same holds. So the more data you have, better are the chances that your your prediction becomes more accurate. But the major challenges are also there. You have to get high quality data, and your data coverage also must be good, that is over the entire operating range. And mind you, the most important thing is, and the main challenge as far as I can see, is that you must have sufficient data even for the faulty condition. You cannot extrapolate healthy data to faulty conditions. So you must have data for all the scenarios, healthy scenario and faulty scenarios. You must get the data. Then only you can train your machine learning model. Investment-wise, predictive maintenance requires more sensors, experts with domain knowledge. You cannot get IT people to solve your problem. That is a big misconception. It's a big myth, which unfortunately I see happening in many industries. You engage an IT firm or machine learning, deep learning firm to solve your engineering problem. It will not work, because those guys only know about the generic approach to applying ML and DL. You will definitely require somebody with domain knowledge, engineers with domain knowledge, if you are trying to solve an engineering problem. There is no substitute for engineering knowledge. So don't expect miracles from ML and DL approaches. They are very generic, and a lot of things are to be looked at, and a lot of insight is required into the engineering part. So a lot of things are to be looked at by the engineers, and engineers have to work together with ML and DL team members in order to come up with a good predictive maintenance model or a good digital twin also. So there's a lot of money required to set up your IT infrastructure, because you have to have sensors and you have to have computers which can be used for doing all the tasks I mentioned in the workflow. And then you also have to have dashboards, email or SMS warning systems. So now let us look at some research directions for predictive maintenance. So basically now I'm looking at the very latest trends in predictive maintenance using AI for IFT. One question which I would like to clear up before going further into research direction is that predictive maintenance has been there in some form for the last 30 years or so. And if you are from the manufacturing industry, you would be aware that we have what is called as CBM, condition-based monitoring. We had seen CBM 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Now, some people would like to call the current PDM as CBM 4.0, but I would like to use the term predictive maintenance. because conceptually, I feel it is different from the traditional condition-based monitoring. Now, if you look at, let's first look at the most well-known categories in machine learning and deep learning. We have what is called as supervised learning, then unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Okay, this is from the course on ML and DL. So we are going to use some of these tools in predictive maintenance. So we are going to look at some of the latest approaches in this slide. How did intelligent fault diagnosis is based on ML and DL. So how did it evolve? As I mentioned, it has been there for the last 30, 40 years. Okay, 30, 40 years ago, we had machine learning techniques, the traditional machine learning techniques like based on SVM and naive Bayes and so on. So those techniques were used in engineering industries for detecting faults, for some kind of predictive maintenance, so on. So that is about the past. Okay, so in the current decade, in the last 10 years, let me say, we have seen deep learning techniques being used for intelligent fault diagnosis and predictive maintenance. So those are shown in light pink color here. And I'm looking at, what is the slide looking at? This slide is looking at number of publications, research publications. So we're looking at the research scenario. And as this slide shows, the deep learning based IFD approaches are picking up in number. Earlier, we had very little or none at all. Now you can see that the pink portion is occupying more of this bar plot. And transfer learning methods are also gaining popularity here. They're shown in light green color. So this slide shows you, if you are into research, where you are looking at predictive maintenance methods, this slide shows you that deep learning and transfer learning methods are now becoming more and more popular as opposed to the traditional machine learning methods. So we have traditional machine learning based methods, we have deep learning based methods, and we have transfer learning based methods for predictive maintenance. These are more details. I'll skip these details. Okay, now those who are into manufacturing will appreciate this. Vibration data is used heavily for predictive maintenance, for preventive maintenance, so on. So vibration data can be combined with supervised learning techniques and with unsupervised learning techniques. So we have autoencoder based, LSTM based, deep Boltzmann networks, then convolution neural networks, RNN, and so on. This slide shows you the comparison of the different algorithms and their advantages versus limitations. Comparisons of the accuracy, performance accuracy, accuracy in general, classification speed means how quickly can you train. Then how is the robustness to noise? Because all the time we are getting data from operating plants. So there will be quite a bit of noise. The signal to noise ratio may or may not be good. So how robust are these methods to noise, overfitting, then physical explainability of the results, and then robustness to some of the hyperparameters. Okay, so in the remaining time, I will just try to yes, one last thing before I go into case studies. In the remaining 10 minutes or so that I have, I'll just take up some case studies to illustrate the concept which I talked about so far. Before going to the case studies, let me talk about transfer learning. This is the future of predictive maintenance. And in fact, if you ask me a general question, what is the use of machine learning and deep learning for engineering industry? What's the use of that? Because most of the time, you see people talking about natural language processing applications of ML and DL, computer vision-based applications of ML and DL, image processing-based applications. But you will find very, very few applications, relatively speaking, of ML and DL to manufacturing systems, to process systems. Okay, very few people who are working on that, and even lesser number of people who are researching into that. So engineering industries might wonder how do we make use of ML and DL? So my answer is one of the best ways of making use of ML and DL is predictive maintenance, going for predictive maintenance. And in predictive maintenance, we have a challenge. What is the challenge? That we have to get data. What kind of data do we have to get? We have to get healthy data as well as faulty data. Now, healthy data people might be able to get from their industry because the plant is operating for ages. So you have lots of data. You might have tons of data stored up in a database. So you can pick that out and use for training, and you will thereby get a healthy a model. It's a model which can tell whether the system is healthy or not. But if you want to go further and be able to catch faults and classify the faults, you must have corresponding data sets. That is generally not available because faults occur far and few between. So what is the way out? The way out is to go for transfer learning. And that's what I'm talking about on this slide. Transfer learning means if some similar system somewhere else, either in the laboratory or in a sister plant or somewhere else, okay, you have the data that you're looking for, you can probably use that data to train the model for your particular system. So once again, you have, so let's say you have an engine with you. Okay, you have an engine, but you don't have all the data that's required. You might be having some amount of data, healthy data, maybe some amount of faulty data, but that data is not big enough, not large enough for you to come out with a good machine learning, deep learning model or a predictive maintenance model. So what can you do? Then maybe you can look around and see if others elsewhere who are using similar engines can share their data with you. If they can share that, then you can go in for transfer learning. So here I'm taking the example of a pilot scale or a laboratory scale setup. I know many plants are there where there are pilot plants. Many industries are there which have pilot plants. So pilot plant data, it can be upscaled to develop a predictive maintenance model for the actual operating plant. So this is a good way, and there's a lot of research going on this. So in short, we are transferring the learning that we are getting from laboratory scale or from some similar plant elsewhere, similar system elsewhere to our own system. So this helps to expand from academic research to engineering senior. So future of predictive maintenance machine learning is in transfer. How much time do you have, Dr. Neha Sharma?
So, I mean, we have another session was planned for 10:30, but
okay.
No, maybe we can. Yeah.
So another 5 minutes, is it okay?
Yeah, no problem, sir. Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'll quickly go through some case studies to wind up my talk. Here is, so I was not talking in the air all the time. We have some concrete case studies here. I will go through them. We have so many case studies. I'll go through some of them very quickly. So this is an application to chemical industry, the famous Tennessee Eastman problem, which is an operating plant in the US. And look at the magnitude of the problem. There are 11 manipulated variables, 22 process measurements, 19 analyzer measurements, and so on. So this is the process diagram. The number of faults is 20. There are 20 possible faults happening in this system. So we have process measurements, then healthy data. You could get the faulty data, and healthy and faulty data combined plot I'm showing. You see how close they are. So very big challenge to be able to separate out healthy and faulty data. So we have come out with, the objective here is to catch the fault. So it is application area number 2. First is anomaly detection. Second one is fault detection diagnosis. And third one is remaining useful life. So here I use the data to train an FDD model. And here are the results. So the accuracy is very high, very good accuracy, around 99% accuracy. It's able to catch the faults. Okay, so accurately diagnose multi-class faults in the Tennessee Eastman UST. Now this is remaining useful life. We don't have time for this, unfortunately, but it's a very important topic. And we have applied this to a jet engine. We have a repository made available by NASA. They have collected the data from a fleet of 218 turbofan engines. the gas turbine. Basically, a jet engine is a gas turbine, and it can be used for propulsion, like in the case of aircraft and warships. Second, it can be used also for power generation. There are some power plants which use gas turbines for power generation. So for propulsion as well as for power generation, we can use gas turbines. So we have got the data from the repository, and we have trained a model and been able to compute how much is the remaining useful life of the turbofan engine. Lastly, I'd like to talk about very briefly about a bit of work which we did very recently for an elite Indian refinery here. This is the problem of a wet gas compressor. There's a normally single compressor is present and there's no spare compressor available when this fails. So it's very important that this compressor, wet gas compressor, should not fail. Because if it fails, then there will be huge loss. Tons of LPG will be flared if this fails. But unfortunately, this does happen frequently, around 5 failures per year. And as you can imagine, when there are 5 failures per year, there's a lot of loss in production and therefore in the profits. So the problem statement here is to predict the seal oil loss in the wet gas compressor. So we have, I'm showing you the process schematic here, WGC schematic. This is more about the process. In the healthy state, only for 3 to 4 drums of seal oil are used in a day. But if there is some fault, then up to 30 drums of seal oil has to be used for this wet gas compressor. You can see the difference. 8 to 10 times more seal oil is used when there is a fault developing. So we have to be able to predict the fault in advance so that can be avoided. The sensor data that is available is also listed here. First stage, second stage, compressor, so much data we are getting. I mentioned here that the work is currently in progress, but we have finished this work and it's a very successful proof of POC that we did, and our accuracy, the accuracy of the model that has been trained is very high. Again, 99% or more, slightly more than 99% accuracy model has been trained. So okay, this is all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions.